Good afternoon. This is just in response to comments that Val Herney made on one of my videos recently about the question of school busing for private schools in New Jersey. There's a very interesting historical connection, specifically in New Jersey, between this issue of busing for private religious schools. And again, this is something that goes across the board for all the different religions and for non-religious private schools as well, that New Jersey was offering school bus services for private religious schools. And I know that the history behind it was that the KKK was upset that the Catholic schools were getting busing, and so it made it to the Supreme Court. And really, this is the point in history where the idea of separation of church and state made it into the law in an interpretation on many levels. And which is an interesting piece of history there. Basically, what the Supreme Court said was that it was the belief of the court that the separation of church and state applies to state governments and not only to federal governments, which was not true. It was never that was not the original intent of the founders. I mean, that's clear from the fact that the champion of separation of church and state was, of course, was Jefferson, and he was the one who, I mean, that's where the quote comes from. And when the Danbury Baptist Church wrote him a letter when he became president, that they were afraid to have such a secular president that it would mean that the churches would be persecuted. And Jefferson reassured them that no, that the First Amendment provides a wall of separation between church and state, really to protect the churches from the state. That's what he meant there. But it's clear from the wording of the First Amendment that Congress shall not establish a religion. That is actually specifically Congress is not allowed to establish any religion. Seems that though that Jefferson did interpret that to mean that the federal government would not. The reason I say that, the evidence we have for that, is that when Jefferson was governor of Virginia, he would make Thanksgiving proclamations as governor for the state. But in the 8 years that he served as president, he never did so. Which would seem to indicate that he felt that a Thanksgiving proclamation was maybe a gray area when it came to establishing religion, even though it wasn't establishing an official church. That's the essential idea of the Establishment Clause, is that you should not have one, like how there's a Church of England, there should be no Church of America. And that's really all it means, as far as the establishment of religion, and then of the free exercise thereof. That they cannot make any laws barring the free exercise of religion. And both are essentially the same thing, if you really get into what it really means. And, I know a lot of scholars like to separate the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause, but they're really one and the same. They're really just the same concept in two ways. So, mentioning that, and the fact of the matter was many states had official religions, into the 1800s, well after the same states that accepted the First Amendment, that ratified the First Amendment, many of those had official religions, and some of them didn't. And so too with local governments. The 10th Amendment protects that right of the states to have, powers that the federal government does not have. Throughout the progressive era, they tried to, and were pretty much succeeded in, establishing whatever the federal government was prohibited from doing to the states, and that's a positive thing. Again, in the sense that it's a negative document, which is good, meaning that it would prevent the government from being too powerful. And there is positivity in that. However, if a really small local government, let's put states aside, I can see the reason why, but again, the states should decide that on their own, in their own state constitutions, either as it was originally when those states were constituted, or as it was subsequently if they amended their constitutions to include this. But still, local governments, it makes sense that local governments should be allowed to have official religions, but still they don't. And the reason for that is this Supreme Court decision. It was around 1947 or 48, thereabout, that this Supreme Court decision came out that it is the opinion of the court at that time that the separation of church and state, which is different than freedom of religion or establishment clause, but still it was understood to be part of the concept. And so that the court's opinion was that the establishment clause does apply to state and local governments within these United States. And with that being said, the opinion of the court was that this does not violate that, providing school buses to Catholic schools, as long as, which already was, any other school would be allowed to take the same thing. And the fact of the matter is, parents who send their children to private schools are taxpayers as well. And, why shouldn't they be able to get at least, those things? I don't know what it is in New Jersey, if it's more than transportation. I know in New York they allow transportation up to 15 miles from home, if, as sometimes they say, if it's available, and also secular books for secular studies classes, as well as computers if the schools want to take those. And since it's equally allowed for any different religion, that's why it's not establishing one religion over another. Now, is it fair? And again, the answer is, if you look at the amount, I don't know how it is in Jersey. I'm sure if all they're taking is buses, then it sounds like it's fair. I mean, if when you see the per capita of how much these parents are investing into their taxes, and the argument that, well, parents who don't send their children to any school are still paying school taxes. Well, that's the whole idea of public schooling, that everybody pays school tax. I know there was a concern with the Curious Joel School District. Why can't a retirement community make their own school district and be exempt thereby from school taxes. And I don't see any reason why not, really, technically, constitutionally, if the laws of the state allow that. I don't, there's no federal right to an education. The whole idea of the federal government being involved in education didn't come about until Jimmy Carter. And I know President Trump is trying to get rid of the Department of Education, as he should. There's no reason for there to be a federal Department of Education. Now, again, I don't know what's going on in New Jersey, but I know in New York, pretty much the schools that, there's different schools in the Orthodox Jewish community. You have the modern Orthodox, which are pretty much going to offer everything that you get in a secular private school, and that's where they're very expensive, their schools, because they're college preparatory schools that are within the Orthodox Jewish faith. Then you're going to have the Lithuanian schools, both for boys and girls, most of the boys' schools, and the girls' Hasidic schools, which will provide a regent's education. That theoretically, generally, if the child would want to go to college, they could. Some of the Hasidic girls' schools don't provide a regent's diploma, but still provide somewhat of a diploma, although they discourage both boys and girls from attending college. Or if they go to college, they'll prefer Touro College. Yeshiva University is considered too liberal for most of these communities, whereas and I attended Touro College myself, in these modern Orthodox schools, they're either, pushing, if they're a little bit more religious, they're going to push that their students attend Yeshiva University, and if they're a little bit less religious, less strict, they might go to secular colleges and try to maintain their religious identity, as difficult as it is in the secular college. The only schools that really don't provide the secular education in the high school level are the Hasidic boys' schools and some of the Lithuanian boys' schools. And as far as elementary school, all the boys' schools, all the girls' schools, all provide secular education. It might be considerably less in the Hasidic schools than it is in other schools, but it's still present. And so at least I know in New York, as far as the schools taking busing, books, and so forth, that it follows the students through the school districts, and it's done, if the schools want to take it. Not all schools take them. When it comes to food programs, well, that follows the student. If the child is low income and they receive lunch programs, and pretty much that's and that follows the student. It doesn't matter really. It's not a education issue per se, and that's about it. And that's what it's all about. I mean, a lot of people are upset about the school district around Monsey, New York, the East Ramapo School District, where the majority of the children who reside in that school district attend private schools. It's an anomaly in America, and the parents feel like we should get whatever bang for our buck, like if we're paying taxes, it should be up to us as taxpayers, what kind of school budgets we want to make. And they've made peace there were some issues over the years, and since then they've made peace, and things have improved a lot. And that's part of the story, what we have there in the East Ramapo School District. I'm not sure exactly what goes on in New Jersey. But it can be historically linked back, like I said, to the Supreme Court case that was specifically about New Jersey, and that's just how it works. And again, it applies. There's no favoritism being shown to the Jewish students. If anything, they're getting. The example I would give in New York, it could cost anywhere between $6,000 to $12,000 a year to the taxpayers for a public school student, whereas the private school student is costing the taxpayers a couple $100 a year. If that on the average, because a lot of the schools don't take buses, especially the Hasidic schools. Even if they're eligible to take busing, a lot of them refuse to take it because it causes issues on civil holidays when their schools are in session, and they have to. And it's the same thing with the modern Orthodox schools and so forth. And a lot of them, what they'll generally do is they'll make the parents transport their children, and so in order to avoid that, the Hasidic schools will say, we're going to charge our part of the tuition, and we're going to have we're going to have our own buses. So that's pretty much what we have here. I don't know what else to say. So thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you all later. Thank you. Again, I don't see what's unfair here. I don't. All right. Thank you.